Hi, this is Joe Hyde with San Angelo Live, and with me today is Brandon Batch. He's also, like we've had a lot of interviews with him, but he's running for Congress for Congressional District 11, and you're from Midland, Odessa area. Midland. Are you called Midland home or Odessa home?
You know, in a certain way, they're both kind of home. I was born in Odessa, raised in Midland.
So you have both of them. So
we have strong connections in both
Because I was
cities.
told, we're doing some marketing stuff down in Midland, Odessa. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be for Midland and you say you're from Midland, all the Odessa people will boycott you. If you say you're from Odessa, all the Midland people will boycott you. So you said call yourself Basin.
You know,
Basin.
There's some things that I think people are focused on when it comes to the Midland and Odessa area. The way I choose to see it, it truly is one community now. It has grown together. We are both suffering from the same economic challenges, public education, infrastructure.
Midland suffering from an economic challenge.
You would be surprised.
Midland and Odessa.
You would be surprised. I mean, right now we have a public education system that is lacking teachers, lacking appropriate schools. And when it comes to infrastructure, we have roads that are falling apart.
Right.
So and that's not something that is, only a Midland problem. I mean, Odessa faces the same challenges.
Well, the whole area faces the problem because these farm to market roads weren't made to haul sand.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we have a shortage when it comes to firemen, police officers. So we got a lot of challenges, but I think, we're getting the right leadership in place, and I think we're going to be okay. Midland. So I say that to say Midland and Odessa, both those places are home to me.
So you graduate from Midland?
Graduated from Midland High.
Midland High. And then you went to Texas Tech after that, right?
Well, so after I graduated, I actually got a football scholarship to go play football in Eastern New Mexico University. I don't know if you
rock.
Well,
Go
Hornets. Eastern New Mexico. I enjoyed my time there. It just wasn't the place for me. There's not a whole lot happening in Portales, New Mexico.
What position did you play in football?
I was a quarterback.
Were you?
No.
Where were you?
I was a running back.
Running back?
Yeah, I was a running back. My brother and I were both running backs, actually.
How fast were you?
I was pretty fast. I ran, I think the fastest time I ran was a 4.45.
4.45.
Yeah.
Manny, is that a good speed? That's a good speed.
Good speed.
All
That's
right.
a thumbs up.
A thumbs up from the sports guy.
Now that was 12, 13 years ago.
What do you run now? About 10, 5? 10, 5?
Oh, good solid 8 flat, I think. Good solid 8 flat. Yeah.
So you ended up in Texas Tech somehow.
I did. I did. After I couldn't play football anymore, I decided, you know what, my education is extremely important to me as well. So I transferred to Texas Tech University, which was pretty cool because my brother was still the running back there.
Right.
And so I got to not only go to Texas Tech and enjoy myself, get a good education, but I also got to watch my brother play football.
Right.
And so it was a good time. I'm a proud Red Raider.
Now, is this your older brother or younger brother?
Well, he's my older brother, but what you have to understand, Joe, there's 5 of us.
Gotcha.
Right?
So you're kind of like this. You're kind of this commingled mix.
Oh my gosh, Bridget, Brian, Barron, Brandon, and Bryson. I'm
all
second.
name B's.
All name B's.
Say that 5 times so it's fast.
Bridget, I can't. You should have heard my parents back in the day try to do it. It was awful.
What did you learn at Texas Tech?
Well, really, I mean, the thing that I walked away from Texas Tech with was this passion for public service. That was where I first got involved and realized that, you know what, I don't know as much about how the government functions as I probably should. And so I wanted to change that. And so after I graduated from Texas Tech, by the way, they have a phenomenal congressional internship program. And you apply for it. If you meet the criteria, then you'll possibly get in if they select you.
Right.
And they send you to Washington for an unpaid internship. Now, I chose to do it after I graduated because I wanted to be able to stay in Washington, D.C.
So you did an unpaid internship after graduating.
Oh, yeah.
How'd you eat?
Well, I worked 2 side jobs. And,
so you're like McDonald's serving the Big Mac.
Look, if there's one thing that I learned at a very young age, it was the art of the hustle. There's nothing that you can't do. It's all a matter of how much work are you going to put into it to actually be able to do what you want. For me, I had no issue working 2 side jobs on top of an unpaid internship. I knew that I made the decision to go to D.C. and that if I wanted to stay there, that was what I had to do. And so that's what I did. Ultimately, I got hired on full time with the congressman.
And who was the congressman you got hired on with?
Congressman Mike McCaul, who was a Republican out of the 10th District of Texas.
And that's down in Houston, or West Houston.
So the 10th District
it's real weird, isn't it?
It's a weird district, right? So it has just a small...
Wait, all districts are weird.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, look at ours. Ours goes from like Granbury, and it goes down to Llano, and it comes all the way across to San Angelo and then Midland, Odessa. I mean,
it's a weird district.
Yeah.
I've heard that there's this this G word that's out there that I think has something to do
Jerry
with
something.
Yeah,
well,
I don't
at least
know.
it's not as weird as Will Hur's district. I mean, that one's weird.
We were talking about having a plane to get around.
Right.
That's one of those districts
Right.
you should have a
So
plane to
Will
get
Hurd
around.
is down in Congressional District 23, and it goes from like Alpine almost to El Paso.
That's right,
All the
yeah.
way to like the suburbs of San Antonio.
Yeah, it's a big district,
Yeah.
and so.
But ours is not that big. It's just 29 counties.
Just 29 counties, no problem. You know, we actually, Ben and I, my campaign manager and good friend, we have a teleportation machine, so we don't even have to worry about
Kinda
it.
like
We
Star
can be-
Trek.
Exactly.
You just like beam
we
yourself.
get around very quick. No, we've gotten used, and I actually enjoy traveling around the district, and I enjoy that in between time because it kind of gives me a little bit of an opportunity to collect my thoughts, breathe, you know, and have a little bit of relaxation because I mean we are going nonstop.
We're going to
trying
get back to
out
Michael
meetings.
McCaul in a second. But
Sure,
I want to ask
sure.
you, so you've been riding around doing this campaign thing for a while.
Yeah.
What have you learned out here in the hinterlands that you didn't think you would know? That you didn't think you would that was the truth?
Well, you know, as a young guy doing this for the first time, I didn't know exactly how my message was going to be received. And here's what I mean by that. You know, a lot of people truly have a disdain for Washington, D.C. But it was Washington, D.C. that gave me the experience that I have, the know-how, how to actually move.
So you thought you had some Washington stink on you?
Oh, I thought that's the way that people would perceive me, right? But, you know, I think combined with my upbringing and my backstory, plus my experience, people truly understand that I'm a candidate that not only knows what it's like to come from nothing and you know, achieve success, but also how to actually get stuff done in Washington, how to move a piece of legislation through the process and get it signed into law, you know, and that stuff's important. You know, I think that for a candidate who does not have that experience, they're going to spend the first 2 years essentially going back to school all over again and trying to learn this very complicated process all over again. I've learned that stuff already, and I truly believe I'm a candidate that can hit the ground running on day
All
one.
right, so you show up there, you're interning for a while for someone else, and then you land this job with Mike McCaul,
Right.
who's kind of a big deal in the Republican Party. I mean, he was
He is.
Mr.
I mean,
Homeland Security.
That's
and,
right, yeah.
And, you know, big on foreign affairs.
Yeah, both Homeland Security and Foreign Affairs.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he was a big player.
So what did you learn from that guy?
Well, I learned a lot of things. I learned quite a bit about the border. I've been to the border and I've been able to see firsthand the challenges that our Border Patrol officials face. I've also been able to travel the world quite a bit and see firsthand what makes America so great, what makes the freedoms that we enjoy here so great.
A lot of people
And-
don't understand that concept, that they haven't been outside of this country, and they don't understand that if our country falls, who the heck is going to go defend them? You know, who's going to defend, who's
Yeah.
going to take care of their human rights and things like that?
Yeah.
So give me an example of a country you went to where this is very blurring you in the face going, man, if America
Yeah.
falls, what the heck is going to happen
Well,
to this place?
a good example of that was when I first went to Saudi Arabia. You know, Saudi Arabia is such an interesting player in the Middle East because they're primarily the premier oil and gas producer in the Middle East, and they also are sort of in this strange proxy war with Iran, right? And they're fighting a war in Yemen right now, and you have the Iranians supplying their militias with rockets, constantly firing. And you actually had the situation right there at Saudi Aramco where the Iranians attacked their oil field.
Right.
And so if the United States, and keep in mind too, we are the country that's helping provide the Saudis with defensive capabilities to make sure that they're able to protect their interests, their national security. But if we weren't doing that, what country would be? Would it be the Russians? Would it be the Chinese? Would it be a country that doesn't necessarily have the best interests of that region at heart? You know, people oftentimes say, you know, the United States is not the world's policeman. It doesn't need to be. And I think that's a blanket statement that we have to kind of deconstruct and look at on a case-by-case basis.
You're saying the United States does not have to be the world's police.
I'm saying that what I'm saying is that that's the popular thing to say,
Right.
But we have to look at each different scenario for what it is.
Right.
For example, our defense cooperation agreement with the Israelis is different than our defense cooperation with the Saudis and with the Jordanians, and you know, in a weird way, even with the Turks. I mean, it's all of those situations are constantly changing, and we have to be able to adapt to that. Now, what I don't think we need to be doing is getting ourselves involved in these long-lasting, prolonged conflicts, these protracted conflicts where we don't really have a solution for it, other than spending a lot of money and losing a lot of blood in that region.
But if you read a lot about foreign policy in the Middle East, one of the issues that there weren't a whole lot of good options in the Turkey, Syria.
Not at all.
Syrian
Sure.
civil war, and when Trump pulled our 1,000 troops out, or whatever, some people say it's 1,000, some people say it's 5,000, but when he pulled our troops out of there, he got a lot. I mean, heck, he had a defense secretary to basically resign over that decision, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about decisions like that? Do you think that was, Trump did the right thing? Do you think it was really risky? If you're in Congress looking over that, what are you going to, what kind of voice would you give to that?
Well, I think, as a and that's a good question, right? Because that was my job when I was advising Congressman McCaul. Like, here's what your best options are. There's, especially in that region, there's no perfect option. There's just a less worse option.
Right.
With the Kurds, they were our most effective fighting force against the Islamic State. They sacrificed a lot, but what we have to realize too is that with the Kurds, there are many different factions within the Kurds. You have the PYG, you have the PKK, these different what are Turkish allies, if you want to call them that, considered to be terrorist groups. And so from the United States perspective, yes, we support the Kurds, but who are we to tell the Turks that these two groups are not terrorist groups when there are factions of the Kurds that do carry out terror attacks in Turkey?
I see.
And so it's complicated. I think really what the president had to do at that time was weigh his options. Is it worth losing a possible major ally in the region, or is it better to maybe lose an important ally in the Kurds? I think that no matter how you look at it, we've lost a little bit of confidence from the Kurds. I mean, I think it's going to be hard for them to trust us again, and that's unfortunate. But with a complex scenario like we had there, it's just really easy for Americans to say we did the wrong thing. What I would encourage people to ask themselves is, well, what was the right thing to do, right? I mean, what would you have done in that situation? And see what answer you get. It's not easy being the president of the United States, and I don't have to be the president of the United States to know that. I mean, you are surrounded by people who it's their job to make sure you're given the best advice.
How would you advise Trump on that?
I
know you're not running to be
sure. I mean, what I would have done was advise the president to keep our troops there and try to leverage our diplomatic capabilities with the Turks to prevent that conflict from ever happening. The Turks are, and I've been in meetings with the Turkish ambassador when he would come to the United States, and they're pretty dead set on the fact that they do not want what they perceive to be a terrorist safe haven right there along their border. And there's no getting around that. They perceive them as terrorists. It's no different than how we perceive the IRG as being a terrorist group.
Or we wouldn't want ISIS to have an encampment on the other side of the Rio Grande.
That's exactly right. And I think with foreign policy, in order to be an effective foreign policy mind or advisor, you have to be willing to remove yourself from your own perspective and try to see it the way that the other side sees it. Otherwise, you're going to be operating out of what I would consider to be an ignorant perspective, and that's when terrible things happen.
Right.
And so I think that the advice that was given to the president was, look, here are your options. If you do X, then Y is going to happen. If you do A, B is going to happen. And he made the best decision given a very difficult set of options. So as we have seen, there were consequences for that. They weren't as cataclysmic as we thought they were going to be. I think that we made it very clear to the Turks that, look, if this results in what we think it might, you're responsible for it. We just have to make sure that our line is always clear, and when we draw a line, we enforce it, and we don't waver in what we say. So I think that's the most important thing. It's an unfortunate situation, no matter which way you look at it. But ultimately, the president, as the commander-in-chief, as the people elected to make these decisions, one thing I think we can all say is that he is a pretty decisive decision maker, and that is refreshing. We did not see that in the previous administration. And so, as this keeps playing out, if I'm elected to represent this district, I want people to know that, I'm someone who has a foreign policy mind, who would like to help the president in any capacity I can, continue to make informed decisions, right. And then come back to the people and explain to them and help inform them on what's going on. So.
All right. So you're African American. And
you can just call me Black, Joe.
You're a black guy. He's a black guy. Anyway, I'm a white guy.
Sure.
And we share like ideals and
Right.
conservative principles and things like
Absolutely,
that. Talk about Trump.
Yeah.
As a black guy,
Yeah.
what's it like being a Trump supporter?
Well, look, I mean, we just celebrated Martin Luther King Day,
Right.
Right, and the whole, at least the way that I perceive the accomplishments, the grand accomplishments that Martin Luther King made in the civil rights, through the civil rights movement, is it gives all of us the ability, no matter which color we are, to think and use and operate with an independent mind. You know, because I'm black doesn't mean that I had to be an Obama supporter. Because I'm black doesn't mean I can't support President Trump. You know, I try to look at things objectively for what they are. And when I look at this president, you know, I see someone who speaks his mind, for the most part does what he says he's going to do. And honestly, I mean, you have a growing black presence, I think, in the United States that sees the progress that he's making and supports him in that. I mean, the African-American unemployment rate, black unemployment rate has never been lower.
Yeah, you use the word now.
You used it first, and you put it in my. But no, the black unemployment rate has never been better. The economy's never been better. We're creating more jobs. You know what he's done for the HBCUs around the country is a good thing. And I think if you ask a lot of black people why they support Trump, it's because they support a guy who's giving them attention finally, showing that he cares about the issues facing the black community and is doing something about it. And I think a lot of black people, if they're honest, they would say, you know, was it cool that we had our first black president? Well, of course, that's a major accomplishment that we should all celebrate. But is that enough? Is that enough to just say, yes, I support him because he was our first black president? Well, you know, even I celebrated the fact that he was the first black president. I think everybody considers that to be progress. But that's not enough. Like, what have you done since then? You know, and I think, you know, he fell a little bit short on that front, and I think President Trump's doing a pretty good job.
All right. Well, McCaul is out there in Harris County. He's in the western side. A big part of his voter block is in the western side of Harris County. And this past November 2018, we had the Beto O'Rourke phenomenon, and you know, they started talking about how, you know, back for the last 20 years, we've had blue inner cities with red rings around them. And now they're saying those red rings that used to vote solidly Republican in the suburbs, like like in Katy, for example, they're going away. And Ted Cruz could have lost that election had it not been for West Texas. You know, I mean, basically Amarillo, Lubbock bolstered the Cruz numbers that he lost in Harris County.
Yeah.
So, you know, Alan West was here a couple months ago, and he's running for Republican Party chair for Texas.
Right.
And one of the interesting things he talked about was how Republicans, you know, and this is stereotypical stuff, I'm going to say, but the Republicans are a bunch of old white men who don't know how to go into the inner city of Dallas or Houston or even, you know, in the inner city of Austin or San Antonio and talk to those people or talk to minorities. Well, I guess they're majorities in a lot of these places. They're majorities.
In Midland, they're a majority now.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're not able to communicate with them to explain to them that, hey, there's some ideas you might be interested in.
Yeah.
Talk to that a little bit and how the Republican Party needs to step up its game if it's going to continue.
Well, that's a very, very important question, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to run. Look, I think oftentimes the Republicans make the mistake of thinking that they can just go into a community and tell people why they need to be Republicans. The approach that I would much rather prefer to take is not yet. First, we have to actually go into these communities, which
Right.
I also think the Republican Party could do a better job at. But instead of telling them why they need to be Republicans, I think we need to ask them the question first of, why are you not Republicans? Or why are you Democrats? You need to give them an opportunity to explain to you what is it about the Democratic Party that is meeting your needs, and what is it about the Republican Party that is not meeting your needs? And then from there, I think we have a better idea.
But wouldn't you say most of the hatred of the Republican Party is based on fantasies?
It's based off of nothing, you know.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, right? This is the second most conservative district in the United States.
Right.
As a black guy, I didn't know exactly what to expect, right? I've gone to just about every county in this district, and I have not experienced one single case of racism. I'm not saying it doesn't exist.
They didn't follow you around at Walmart?
Oh, golly, no. I mean, look, the people in this district are beautiful. They're the most kind, supportive. I mean, And I think most people know this, and that's
So,
what
so
makes
you
this
feel like
district
you
so-
feel like, hey, I got equal opportunity out here, just like anyone else.
Of course, and I think a lot of it, and I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist. I'm not that naive, but I think a big part of it is the mindset that you choose to have in general in life. And my mindset has always been, and it's primarily because of the way my mom educated me. Right? She used to always say, "There's nothing you can't beat." When you operate with the mindset that there's nothing that you can't beat, that you have just as much opportunity to accomplish just as many things as anybody else, and you approach life that way, it's amazing how little actually people will care about whether you're black or white or I mean, it doesn't matter. Now, you do have cases of ignorance and racism that exist, but that people are not perfect. You can go to any country across the planet and you're going to experience the same thing. But I think the vast majority of people, the vast majority of Republicans are not racist at all. And as a young black guy running for Congress in a overwhelmingly white district, to be able to say that I've not experienced one single case of, overt racism. Now, who knows? I mean, maybe there's somebody that said something behind my back. I don't know. But my experience throughout this race has been a beautiful one. And it's one that I think has helped even educate me in a lot of different ways. And I think we have to stop allowing Democrats to bludgeon us with this racism tool all the time. And I think the way that we do that is by getting more minorities involved in the party, making the party look more like America. And if I think we can do that, we de-weaponize them in a way that would honestly be extremely damaging to that party. But in order to do that, we got to start getting young is an important part of this, young minorities in positions of influence, so then they can then go out to these communities, whether it's the black or Latino community, and help broaden the Republican umbrella so we can all help keep Texas red. And that's a big part of this, of my message, is that I think I'm a candidate that can truly help keep Texas red. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that it would be much easier for me to go into a black community and listen to their needs and help and tell them the way that the Republican Party can address their needs than it would be a 60-year-old white guy. I mean, and I think the more again that the party.
I've done that.
How'd it go?
But I'm not a 60-year-old white guy. I'm just a middle-aged guy. But the McGregor district of Houston. I worked on a congressional campaign about 10 years ago, and and there was this guy there. He was a Tea Party guy, and his name was he used a word as a preacher. He was Claver. The Apostle Claver. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's a black guy.
Okay. Yeah.
And he bought a billboard on the Loop 610, right there in the middle of McGregor, and it said Martin Luther King was a Republican. And the outrage on that billboard was so great that they forced the billboard company to take it off, and they refunded his money. And that's how bad it was down there.
Yeah.
And this was Sheila Jackson Lee's district, by the way.
Well, yeah. I mean, well. To be expected, then.
To be
I think,
expected.
yeah.
But you talk to the regular folks down there. They're just like us. They don't want crime in their city, in their neighborhoods. They want their kids to have an equal chance or a good chance of living a better life than they did. Sure. They want them to get educated. Those kinds of things. These are common.
Absolutely.
These are common goals that every family in America has, and that's what I learned from being down there. And I don't know who's voting for these Democrats, because I think if we would have stayed down there a little bit longer, we probably would have won that whole district.
Well, I'll tell you this: if California under Democratic leadership was so great, why are they all coming to Texas?
That's right.
And so Alan West, speaking of Alan West, he was at the Ector County Republican Women's Club luncheon, and he goes, "You want to know what the largest export California has is? Californians." And they're all coming to Texas. And he goes, "And you know what? I'll tell you this. I'm not going to let California, or these Californians Californicate my Texas." And I think there's something to that. If when you look at Texas and when you look at the economic output that this state provides, we have an economy that could be compared to even countries on the world stage.
Right.
And I think that's because we have conservative principles and conservative policies.
And low tax rates.
Exactly.
Or no tax
Or
rates.
no tax rates, yeah. And I think we're an example. Our state is an example for the country as to what conservatism and conservative policies can do. And for the life of me, I don't know why it's so complicated. Why other states can't just emulate.
Well, part of Texas's deal is we get a lot of tax revenue off of oil and gas.
Which is sure.
And so because of that, that's kind of like our crown jewel. So as congressmen, what are you going to do to protect our oil and gas, our crown jewel?
Well, I'm not going to talk about what I will do. Let me talk about what I've done when I was in Congress.
All right.
So as working for the congressman, obviously I advised him on energy issues, and of course, back in the day we had a ban on the exportation of crude oil, right? And that was to make sure that we always had reserves here in the United States in case.
From Jimmy Carter days.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that crude oil export ban was in effect up until a few years ago.
2015.
And I was part of a group of staff that helped guide the crude oil export ban, removing that ban through the process, and get that signed into law. So we no longer have this ban. We can now export our crude oil abroad, helping relieve the sort of the amount of leverage that Russians have over our Eastern European allies, and
also make a lot of money for the state of Texas.
Make a lot of money in the process, right? Also, I was a part of a group of staff who helped this was actually during the Obama administration, when the Obama administration had determined that the Russians had been involved in our election. They placed a number of sanctions on the Russian energy sector, not thinking about what those sanctions and how those sanctions were going to affect the U.S. in terms of its oil and gas production. Well, the United States operates all over the world, right? We operate in Africa. We operate in, for example, Chevron, their biggest plant is in the Tenzing oil field in Kazakhstan. And when we sanctioned the Russians, we essentially kicked ourselves out of key regions around the globe because we said no entity can do or be involved in a joint venture with a Russian energy company. Okay, well, that's a big problem when the United States is sanctioning its own energy companies.
Right.
So I was a part of a group of staff that went back and had to rewrite the underlying law, helping relieve the pressure that we were putting on our own energy companies.
So our guys could stay in Russia.
So we could stay in. So we not even stay in Russia. I mean, now if you're we do have oil and gas companies operating in Russia, but if you're Chevron, you just transit Russia. You don't operate in the heart of Russia, but it was saying we can't even use Russian pipeline. By the letter of the law, we couldn't even assist in the repair of a damaged Russian pipeline, which is ridiculous, even by the most leftist environmentalist standards. And so, that was a knee-jerk reaction that was not well thought out, and I was able to go along with other staff and help fix that. And so when people ask me, well, what are you going to do? I always like to just talk a little bit first about what I've done. For example, I was also one of the staffers involved in a policy called the 1 In, 2 Out Act. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
It was an idea back in 2013 that our office developed that says that for every new major economic regulation of $1 million or more, you have to repeal two previously existing economic regulations. It's a way to make sure that we're not dealing with an overregulated.
Isn't that kind of like how Trump says he's doing it? He said, before I sign a regulation, I'm going to repeal two.
He took the 1 In, 2 Out Act,
He took that
idea, and enforced it via an executive order.
Gotcha.
And it was an idea that we developed back, looking at the United Kingdom and the way that they deal with their regulatory environment. They actually have a system now of 1 In, 3 Out.
Gotcha.
And who knows? Maybe next year it'll be 1 In, 4 Out. Who knows? But the reality is that when you're dealing with regulation on top of regulation, especially if you're a small business, you spend more time dealing with paperwork than you do growing your business, and that's not right.
Right.
So, but to answer your question, yes, I will be a strong advocate for the oil and gas industry here in Texas 11 because I know how important it is. We fuel America. Shoot, I mean, we
fuel the world.
fuel the world,
Yeah.
and it gives us leverage in such a major way because we're energy independent to make more informed foreign policy decisions.
Right.
Whether it's diplomatic or if it actually ever does result in a conflict, we are prepared, and so that's a good thing.
Well, we're going to have to cut this short, but it's been long. But
but
it's been
I get excited about this.
But it's been interesting, very interesting. And this is Brandon Batch. He's running for Congress, Congressional District 11. I'm Joe Hyde with San Angelo Live. Thank you very much.